I don't know. This, now they want music. We don't have music. We don't even have a name. We don't know what we're doing here. Good evening, welcome, bienvenue. We're a little bit late this evening because Egan doesn't understand GMT. He's failed the GMT test, and remedial action will be taken. Gene, John, Patrick, and I are going to talk through his exam. He was crazy enough to go and take his Part 107 test as if he had walked in off the street and wasn't a pilot, when in fact he is a pilot. And maybe we can just jump in and you can start telling us all about how it went, Jonathan.
Okay, so I did that study guide and sent that out for a lot of people, and so I wanted to kind of validate it, so that's why I went in and took it to see what the questions were like from the inside. So, I mean, if you studied the information that I put up there, and most of that is just referencing FAA material, you should be able to pass. It's just putting in the effort to diligently study it out to comprehend the material. But one thing I just want to point out is just that it's kind of lacking in the community is they think that this remote pilot certificate is, you know, it's just this hurdle to overcome, and then that there's really not really any sense of professionalism to try to better themselves in going out and learning how to be a better pilot. And so I encourage everyone to also think that, you know, once you pass the 107 exam, that the next thing to do is to go find somebody to mentor you, to go and be better than what you currently are, because the 107 exam is just the key that opens the door to you to go start flying outside, but it shouldn't be the end of your journey, but the beginning of it. So it sounded like it was should have been on a card or something I gave somebody to at a birthday. Here's your drone for your birthday party, and here's a card that I created. It's the beginning of a journey.
Was it your interview journey? I'm going to put that up here. I'm going to put that on
put that right back here.
Yeah.
Become, you know, do you want to be I'm inviting you to become part of the journey or something?
So
so I went in and took the test. There were 60 questions, and I ended up getting 100 on it. The questions, some of them were well written, some of them were not. So I would encourage everyone to be very, very careful when they're reading the answers, because you'll pretty much always boil it down to two answers. And then there'll be one trigger word that'll knock one of them out. They'll just use one word, and so you have to read it very carefully. Some of them weren't just well written at all. So it would pretty much be the equivalent of if the person memorized the answer sober, or the question sober, and then they got drunk, and then they basically just spitted it out, whatever that came to mind, and it was all kind of didn't really make sense, didn't flow well. So there were a few of those in there. So, yeah, they could have done a little bit better, but they had to crank out a whole lot of questions here for a question bank really quickly. So, I mean, overall, it was pretty good, asking a lot of questions about sectional charts. So you should know sectional charts cold. You should know Part 107 cold. Those things are just, you know, given on the exam, that you'll have a lot of those questions.
Was there much pertaining to I see people getting their E6Bs out and stuff like that. Is there much pertaining to navigation and that sort of thing? I've been a little bit bewildered as to why an E6B would be around.
No, see, a lot of these like 107 study courses, pretty much, I guess they didn't really know what was going to be in the exam. So early on there was the draft ACS, and I don't know how many people really bothered to look at that. They just kind of repurposed Part 107, Private Pilot Knowledge Ground School kind of courses. So they were chucking the E6Bs and a bunch of other issues in there, and that really wasn't necessary. You're not navigating where you have to figure out, you know, what your course is, because there's the wind, and now we have variation and, you know, deviation and stuff like that. All that, you don't really need to know that. Now you need to know what the variation line is on the sectional, so you know the difference between true and magnetic north. You can correct for that, or also just so you don't get that confused with Class D at the surface or something like that. But there wasn't anything like that. I think that was just poor planning on the parts of the people that were developing those. The what?
Gene's running away. Gene's on a call, I think. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
He's had enough. He heard E6B and that terrified him. He went straight back to flight school and all those nightmares. So
yeah, if you learn how to use the whiz wheel, there's some cool little features that you can convert, to you can convert all sorts of things on that.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, what can you not convert on the E6B?
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much does everything.
Yeah, I gave mine to my son because he wants to be a pilot foolishly, so he's using it now. But I think they all use electronic things now, don't they? These modern young things. I don't know. I'll never catch on. Never catch on. So your coursework obviously it's covered the stuff, and other people's courses are going to catch up and be modified fast now to accommodate what people walk out with. Do you have a sense of the size that the question bank will end up being? Will it end up being 500 questions? How do these things normally work? Is it normally 200 questions that it might pull the 60 from?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, how the overall number of the question bank, but I know that the question bank is ultimately linked back to the ACS. That's why they finalized that in the last part of July. And so then all those questions are going to have to be tying back to one of those points. So when people are kind of running around on the internet finding out what questions people kind of remember from recall from the test, I would say just scrap all that, because you don't really remember, you don't know how well they remembered their the question and the multiple choice answers. I would just say go study the ACS out, because it lists out everything you're going to be tested on and how much percentage wise you're going to be tested on. Also go to the testing supplement. So when you get that, you can download it. You're going to get a copy, the test center's copy, when you go take the test, and they're going to ask the questions out of it. So, hey, look at Figure 25, Area 3. Well, if you go and familiarize yourself with that, which that information is online available, it's in that study guide that I put out, then you can actually start kind of quizzing yourself. Hey, what's around Area 3 on Figure 25? Let's go to Area, Figure 26. Let's look at Area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What could they ask me? And you can kind of pre-flight plan all of these things out. Furthermore, if you're iffy on the sectional chart, if you go to the supplement, so hey Gary, now I'm looking at your screen. So if you scroll down, a little bit.
Hang on. All right, let's see if we can work out how to do that.
Don't you know what scrolling is? What is it?
Yeah, no. Is this scrolling? Yeah, but I'm sharing the screen. Is it scrolling?
Yeah.
Okay.
So scroll down a little bit more, and if you look at the testing supplement, it should be a little bit farther down. A little bit farther down. It's like right there, tips. So click that, Airman Knowledge Testing Supplement. So just click that. This is what you're going to get in the Airman, when you take the exam. They're going to give this to you, their own copy. You can't bring yours in, but you'll have theirs. And so, yeah. And then if you just start going through it, everyone should familiarize themselves with this. If you go to like Figure 1, they have a legend for the sectional chart. So I think a lot of people didn't even properly familiarize themselves with all the equipment they had going into this test. They probably missed quite a few questions, and they had the answers literally right there in front of them. If you go to Figure 1 there.
More importantly, was there any questions on how to take a good drone selfie?
No. I do not see anything like that.
Well, forget it.
Mr. Geniality, there we are. Yeah, that'll be Patrick then.
Okay, well.
Yeah, okay.
I want my money back.
You just reminded me of like those like two old guys from the Muppets.
The Muppets?
Yeah, that's what it just reminded me of that. It's like, well, I don't want it then. It's stupid.
Now you get the.
I've got a picture of him now. A picture of him in that. They're in that the
little balcony
at the top.
in the suits.
Yeah, I think I'm in trouble. I see shenanigans coming here.
Well, well, I think we know exactly how to sort your profile picture out on SUS News now. I know exactly how to do that. So, it's got to be done.
That's funny.
So, the other guy.
Yeah, oh, there you go. The two of them, of course.
Oh, yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
I've embraced my inner curmudgeon.
Say that again, Gene, sorry?
I have embraced my inner curmudgeon.
Yeah, cool. Well, we all get into a certain age, we're allowed to do that, aren't we?
Yep.
So the test went okay. Obviously, you passed, and that was cool, and all those other good things. So well done, you. Top marks for putting your neck in the noose for that. The big thing that everyone's been talking about once the test is out of the way is waivers. People want to crack on and do things, and amazingly, they seem to come out almost instantaneously. I think we all thought it's going to be 60 to 90 days, and tick, 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 a few hours into the day, and people were getting them. So maybe you can explain how that worked for you, and if people moving forward can get a waiver, on how they would get a waiver, rather.
Sure. Okay, so how that ended up happening was that the FAA was not going to start processing or granting the, really granting is a better way to put it, the waivers until August the 29th. So all of those ones that were just suddenly granted were not filed on that morning. Like, we all woke up at like 6 a.m. and started filing them. Actually, the night waiver, I picked up, one of my clients picked up a night waiver for under Part 107. That was filed for under a 333 exemption back in March of this year. So the FAA had already been working on that, and they converted it from an exemption over to a waiver when they were kind of doing that triage, if you will, of the exemptions. And so that's how all these kind of came about here. People had already filed for beyond visual line of sight over people type of operations a while back. So that's why they all kind of just dumped here real quickly. Now going forward here, there's the FAA opened up a portal, and then you can actually go on there and apply. There's the airspace waivers when you want to operate in Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo at the surface. And then there's other waivers for like night waivers, beyond visual line of sight, operating over people, moving vehicle in populated areas. Those are other waivers that you can obtain. Now, start to finish on those, I do not know the answer, because that waiver that that night waiver that I picked up was from an exemption. So I don't know the timelines from actual Pure 107 waiver portal to approval. No, nobody knows now at the moment.
Okay, so it's going to be wait and see, really, isn't it?
Right.
So let's move on then from your test again. Well done. We've done waivers. A couple of new products have come out in the last week or so. Today, I like the look of the Unique Breeze. Have we all seen the little? It's for Patrick. It's made for Patrick. It's a selfie quadcopter. Have you seen that one, Patrick? Have you got excited about it yet?
I did. I'm a fan of a good selfie. I teach that you can get a certificate in selfie drone. It's very important, as far as I'm concerned. I did see it. I think it's good. I have to say with that one, as far as the industry is concerned, GoPro with every day now, the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
I did see that Unique, the new selfie drone. Did you see a price point on that, Gary?
I think it's €5.99, and it's going to be like $4.99. So it's a little bit on the expensive side, but it's pretty feature packed. I think it's got a GPS. It's got all the normal RTL stuff. And I thought what most interesting was it's completely autonomous, no traditional controller. But you're bob on. If I were producing the Karma, the GoPro drone, I would be getting more and more worried every day. And Christmas is coming. They've got to come with an announce soon.
Well, just the geese or the goose is getting fatter by the day, and they're kind of at the price point that I had talked to GoPro about. And said, you're going to have to hit. And I think if this gets out, it's out in the wild and it works. It's just going to be one more aircraft that they're going to have to, share the space with. So we'll see what happens. I think this is going to be another Christmas that'll be make or break, and I've kind of put that out there too. With the, I wonder if our favorite drone company from Berkeley is even going to be any part of the contending at Christmas. Anyone want to make any comments on that?
No, I think everybody pretty much agrees that we know where that one is going.
Yeah, it's
Into the fifth dimension.
Well, I mean,
Would be.
they only got $20 million, right? So it should take them about 3 months to be through that.
Well, that was only a debt equity swap, so that was not like from what I heard, that was not an infusion of cash. So, but they did just get that big fat contract, so they may be sticking around. No, I just think we're going to have a Christmas that's going to have a few new consumer drones in it, and that's going to be tough. Now, one other thing, and I think I don't want to. Well, actually, I'll let you drive the bus here.
No, you carry on, Patrick. You're just going to sit there mithering away if you don't get it off your chest, whatever it is.
Well, I mean, there's lots of confusion out on the boards, and I knew this would happen. The 107 comes out, now everybody's like, oh, hey, wait a minute. What about FPV? Which I have kind of termed the redheaded stepchild of the drone world, because now people are like, wait a minute, am I going to have to do 107 so I can fly FPV because X, Y, and Z? I'm not a member of AMA. Where does that leave me? I'm not following the community-based organization rules. Is this, are there people left out in the cold? Did people get disenfranchised? There's all these questions. Do I have to register my Who's Band 4 FPV drone if I use it commercially? And so more questions arise with every, let's say, thing the FAA puts out. And I don't know the answer to all of those questions, and I can't get bogged down in that stuff because I'm busy taking selfies. But any opinions out there as far as all that is concerned?
We can only ask for a legal opinion, can't we? Or Gene's a secret.
You can't do it. You can't do it. I mean, FPV is, they've said you got to have a buddy box and you got to keep it in line of sight and you got to keep it in the package. So that kind of takes all the fun out of it, doesn't it?
Oh, I love watching FPV racing. That's one of my favorite pastimes.
Oh no! Oh, the emails every time he opens his mouth.
I love it. I can't get enough. I'm 24/7, on that stuff. I've got I'm gonna get my cable channels, gonna hook it up, and I can just watch it while I'm sleeping.
Have you watched that drone TV?
No.
Look, he's gone. You've made him go. It doesn't take you long, does it?
He got up and walked out. That's it. Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was your favorite pastime.
He's very sensitive, isn't he?
I guess. Oh wait, is he coming back?
I'm
sorry.
Hi. Hi, I'm Patrick Egan, and here with SUS News, and today we're talking about FPV. Oh,
the sunglasses. I love it. The sunglasses. Oh God, what are we supposed to do?
I look like a wrestler. I went from Patrick to
WWE.
No, the guy from the wrestling guy. What's his name? Oh yeah, Macho Man.
Hold on, I'll go back to attorney now.
Back to attorney. What we were talking about before Patrick insulted the largest growing segment of the unmanned aviation.
I didn't insult him. I love that. I love that stuff. I can't get enough.
Those are the people that market is going to drive. Is driving all sorts of innovation in speed controllers and motors, and that's going to come through big time to the rest of the market. All the inspection drones, they're not going to be 30 centimeters across and 1.2 kilos like a Phantom. They're going to be 15 centimeters across and, I don't know, whatever they weigh, 500 grams. And this unique, if I want to try and bring some semblance back round to the Breeze, it's got a 4K camera, it's completely autonomous. Okay, it can only fly for 10 or 12 minutes or whatever it is. But if you're inspecting a building and you've got 2, 3, or 4 of those and they're working together, then that's your building inspected. So I think, personally, I think that's the size it's going to work. And if it takes a few FPV racers to bring the technology and make it forward, then I'm all for it. Oh, I hope I recovered that. I hope that got them back. Anyway,
send
Jonathan,
all your nasty emails to Gary at.
But Jonathan, back to the FPV thing. I think the confusion is that the AMA safety code says one thing, but we don't necessarily know that the FAA agrees with that part of the AMA safety code. And I think from what Loretta was saying the other day that there is no provision made for goggles or to have an observer and goggles in the in the Part 101 side, but in the Part 107 side, you can have an observer. So let's flip it around to you, Jonathan, and I think that's where the confusion lies.
Sure. Under 101, well, 101 is pretty much a copy-paste of 336 from the FAA Modernization Reform Act of 2012. And when you read it, there's a specific portion in subsection C where it says flown within visual line of sight of the person operating the aircraft. So under the 2014 policy statement the FAA issued, their idea of visual line of sight was more or less like an ability that you have to have your eyeballs on the aircraft at all times as opposed to a distance. So in 107 you can fly FPV provided that you are have a spotter. His eyeballs are on the aircraft while you're flying. But with 101 there's nothing said there, and that conflicts with the 2014 model aircraft interpretation of 336, which is kind of brings in the 101 issue. The FAA in the preamble of the final rule that came out said that they were updating the 2014 interpretation, and at some point here they will issue a statement, and most likely they're going to update that at some point, probably to coincide with 107, because for the FPV at least allowing it. I don't know what type of standards or whatever they're going to discuss in there, but it'll be getting updated at some point here in the near future to probably just address that issue. The near term, under the FAA's interpretation, then FPV would not be, I guess, complying with the FAA's current interpretation of flying within line of sight. So then 107 would provide an alternate route, but this is also in a state of flux. So is the FAA going to, pick a fight and go after people? I can say that when the 23 enforcement actions that the FAA released with the FOIA documents, there were a few of them that mentioned specifically in the complaint that the individual was flying beyond visual line of sight, and that individual was charged with careless and reckless. However, it was not clear whether or not that alone was a careless and reckless operation, because they had other things they were doing, like flying in Class Bravo airspace over people or something like that, that were sufficient in and of themselves to be careless and reckless. But it was just worth noting that the FAA, the prosecutors were listing that out as some fact that was important to the complaint itself.
And what brought those cases to the FAA's attention? Were they dobbed in by somebody, or did they hit something?
Some crashed into people. Cops, found out info, and then the cops reported it, and it went up the food chain through the air safety inspectors doing some investigations, stuff on the internet. So there's a bunch of different ways that's happened. I've heard a lot of just weird stories and stuff that it's not just always the cops. You wouldn't think. There's other ways that people have gotten in trouble. Just randomly, somebody doesn't like a drone and just so happens to call the FAA and say, "Hey, I think so and so is operating illegally." So just completely random situations. They just don't like drones. So.
All right. Well, and the other deal is I want to blunt the negative emails on FPV, because do you guys want a little history lesson on FPV and the 550 rule?
Go on then. We're sitting comfortably.
Right. Okay, good. Because so at the end of the SUAS arc back in 2009, FPV was going to get left out in the cold. There was not going to be any FPV at all. The FAA was like, not having it. So somebody who was also trying to, let's say keep the modeling thing alive, and said, okay, well, hey, we got to do some kind of back channel deal to get this thing going. And that would be me, and there was another guy, and I just tried to contact this guy yesterday in RC groups because I can't remember his last name. First name was Scott, but anyway, he goes by Typical Master on RC groups. And basically, he was the guy that did all the legwork, and I set it up behind the scenes with the AMA, the president of the AMA at the time, and some people at the FAA to work together on some way to facilitate FPV. And the buddy box was the only way to get around the visual line of sight thing. So the person with the buddy box would actually be the one deconflicting the airspace as the other person was flying. And of course, there was a big hue and cry that people weren't happy with that because they wanted to be able to fly FPV wherever and yada yada. But my justification is at least some part of it is legal, and you can sell the FPV stuff, and you can go out and do FPV, and you can do FPV at the AMA fields, etc. Of course, nobody was really happy, but as far as I'm concerned, FPV was saved at that point. I know people want to do stuff beyond that. I don't know what to say as far as the visual line of sight thing and keeping your eyes on the bird and deconflicting the airspace. I have to say that the 107, there are parts of the 107 that make no sense to me whatsoever. Let's say taking into account the historical airspace integration effort and just how the FAA dug their feet in. You remember the what was that old platitude, Gene? It was the Buddhist thing, do no harm. Remember that?
Yeah.
And now we're like, everything looks good. Oh God, drones are great. We have a new fanboy. But that's kind of the history lesson on the 550 document and FPV. So before you send in your hate mail, you know, I snatched it from the jaws of death once. I'd like to see it progress.
That's right. You have a champion.
That's right. So there's the history lesson on FPV.
We can wake up now again, Jonathan.
No, I'm awake.
Yeah, that's good. So, but basically, did 101 come into force at the same time as 107, or did that roll in together? Yeah, it did, didn't it? And that's what's been missing, I think, from the sort of the conversation. Really, the AMA today sent out a memo to everyone telling us in the headline that AMA exempt from earning a remote pilot certificate, Part 107, i.e. the members don't have to get them. Actually, being a member of the AMA doesn't confer you any special powers with the FAA at all. It doesn't make you, doesn't makes no difference at all. What they should have said, perhaps to my mind, is actually now, kids, we're flying under Part 101, and that's what we need to be looking to. If you want to do anything outside of Part 101, you need to be having a Part 107 certificate. But they didn't put it like that. But there we go. Has anyone got any thoughts about what did we all see what the AMA said? The AMA exempt from earning a remote pilot certificate? Any thoughts? Patrick's not even got any. Gene?
Well, the AMA has, since this all began, has been struggling to maintain membership and to maintain relevancy, actually, more than anything else. I know that they promote the science of it and the promotion of aeronautical study. But from a modeler standpoint, it's just become too easy to step out in your backyard and fly. So why should I pay $35? And
$75.
Oh, excuse me. I dated myself. Sorry. Yeah, even more so. $75 for what? Hey, quit laughing.
I'm just thinking, wait a second. If you've been paying them $30, I'm like, wait.
Yeah,
I guess I'm paying too much, or maybe you're not a member anymore. You should check into that, actually.
Don't be talking to me like that, Sonny. I've been around longer than
you. You should give him those hats and a gold pen and be like, there's gold in them hills.
Well,
I've been watching too many westerns. I'm sorry.
If you're not spending as much of your gold on being a member, then you have more gold remaining in your pocket as well. Yeah.
Right.
So 101's in force, and we gotta look out to that. I think the AMA haven't necessarily covered themselves in glory, but hopefully they'll get on the program, because as I said the other day, it's a terrible training opportunity lost. If a youngster was to come to me with a 107 certificate, but then they also had in their hand all the AMA safety certificates and sort of hoops you can jump through in their mentoring program, I would be more impressed with that candidate than I would with somebody that just came with a bare 107. If someone's grown up with AMA training, and a safe and responsible attitude to flying, then that would work a lot better than for me. But anyway, maybe that's just me. I think it has a place in this whole big thing. It just needs to line itself up properly, and should have listened to Patrick at ARC 1. And I think a lot of people don't realise that they didn't have a seat at ARC 2. Now, you can maybe speak to that, Patrick, when we did that Freedom of Information request for that all those years ago. You know.
The secret ARC 2 that I was told, I wish I had the time and money to sit down and for a few months and write a book, because ARC 2 was done in secret. And you're laughing over there. Mister, I don't even know where.
It's going to be a picture with a bunch of animals, and it's going to be called Patrick's Ark or something. Anyways.
It could be. It could be. There'll be a lot of animals in there that were, let's say, I don't want to get into that because that'll be too far out to sea or wherever. But the 2011 ARC, I was guaranteed when that was stood up. I only found out about that in Paris because everybody was over there for a symposium over there. And oh yeah, we started up ARC 2. What? Oh yeah, but don't worry about it. We're not going to talk about smalls at all. Has nothing to do with commercial activity. Don't worry about it. Nothing you'd be interested in. Have a nice day. Well, I didn't really believe that. And I did try and get on that. I wrote Peggy Gilligan a letter and said, hey, I need to be on this because we're going to talk about commercial drones, blah, blah, blah. No, we're not going to do that. And then somebody FOIA'd the minutes to the ARC meetings, and it was all about small commercial drones getting into the NAS, yada, yada. But that was another missed opportunity for us, I think.
Well, yeah, I think that.
The minutes to the registration ARC were released also, right?
I did see those, and those I'm surprised at. Some of the comments, even in the NPRM, that people shot down some really good stuff. I guess maybe they just didn't understand what was going on, and that's one of the reasons that even to petition to get onto the ARC. There are a lot of people that advocate for us that don't understand aviation engineering, federal law, rulemaking, or even federal rulemaking with the FAA, and it's cost us.
I know. I've just thought about I've seen a couple of other sort of 107 questions that are bumbling around the forums. Quite a few people are now confused. They've got their RPA registered as a hobby RPA, and they've got their 107 now. So do they need to cancel the hobby one and then get an N register for it, or do they have to fly when they're flying as a hobby, just display the hobby one, and then what markings do 107 people generally have to have on their aircraft now, John? Well,
for 107, you're going to have to either have the higher end version. There's two levels of the Part 48. There's like the recreational, which is primarily just registering an individual, and he has a certificate, kind of like a number that's applied to him, and he can put it on every aircraft. Well, when you go for the higher one, then it's actually registering the aircraft. You pay $5 per bird. That's the one you want. So if you've done the other one where you get to apply it to all your aircraft, where it just asks you for your name, your email address, you need the one where it actually asks for the serial number of the aircraft. That's the Part 48 method. You could also do the Part 47 paper-based, actually the FAA just recently changed that. The 8050-1s used to be paper, and you had to go to the FSDO or order from Oklahoma City. But they just changed that recently, and now it's a PDF that you can actually do that, as opposed to going and getting the paper, which was super annoying to go and get. So those are the two methods of doing it, Part 48 or Part 47. Part 47 is probably the safer bet right now because it's not being challenged in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, while the Taylor case is. I believe this week the FAA's reply brief. Okay,
what does that mean?
What happened was the FAA basically violated Section 336 of the FMRA by creating a rule regulation governing model aircraft. Part 48 is written so broadly so as to encompass the protected aircraft, the model aircraft that are falling into the 336 definition and use. The FAA wrote it so broad as to capture them as well, so that was prohibited by Congress. Additionally, they created the regulations too quickly, and then they cited the good cause exception, which is used only in really emergency situations or in situations where people are not going to have any problems with it. That would be like typos and stuff, commas, nothing really people care about. Or in the third situation where notifying people would cause more harm to the public than the benefit. So that would be situations like like some type of announcement from the SEC or something like that, where that would actually fluctuate and change prices of the stock market, or it would hurt people because of that. So that's why they don't let the info out. So it's really those three exceptions, and the FAA cited that they pretty much ran out of time on the creating this rule, and that they had to go the good cause bypass route to issue these regulations as opposed to going the notice and comment route, which is what everyone has to do. This whole 107 deal originally started back in 2009, and it worked its way through the FAA and then the regulatory process, and then just went down into effect. So the FAA didn't have enough time to get a registration rule through the same amount. I mean, it takes a long time. So that's why they did this emergency route. So it's currently getting challenged in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the court right below the United States Supreme Court, and by John Taylor. I've been helping him out, and there's some other people that are also helping him out as well behind the scenes. And so we've already filed the brief. The FAA filed their brief. We already filed the reply, and then I believe this week the FAA's reply brief is due. We are estimating a ruling on that sometime. Man, I object to what? So, oh yeah, I'm gonna sue you. I'm gonna sue you. Anyway, and so we're expecting an answer on that late January, early February.
Okay.
Striking it down as being illegally created. So, backing it all out, you might want to go Part 47 because Part 48 might get thrown out.
I see. And just remind us again, which one was that of the two? That was the more complicated one.
Yeah, you got Part 48 is the one that's getting challenged right now.
And which bit of paper
the other
was
one's
that?
Part 47. So the Part 48 one is the one that they've been pushing on their website heavily, where you go onto their website and you register and you pay $5. That's the one they're pushing. So you're going. The one that's not getting sued is the Part 47 registration process. That's the way it would probably safer to go.
So potentially, are you the man then? If that gets kicked out, that a whole lot of people that got paid $5 for are going to be really unhappy with, because they've then got to go and do the other way.
Send your emails to Gary at. No.
Yeah, not me. It's Gary. Yeah, my email is Gary at.
Yeah.
If you want to send me viruses, please feel free to attach them.
Oh, no, not again. All right, so I know another question that's come up, or I've seen people talking about is, so I've got my shiny new 107 ticket, I'm Captain Courageous, off I go. Gene's got a fabulous company, and he's told me to go downtown and fly, let's say, an Inspire, and off I go, and I fly this Inspire, and it hurls itself off into something, and it crashes, and on looking at it, I really see it wasn't very airworthy. So whose responsibility is that? Is that my responsibility as a Part 107 pilot, or am I going to go after the company that's hired me to do that flight?
Oh, well, you have to separate the two issues with between the pilot in command and the FAA. You also have pilot in command versus the third party. So between the pilot in command and the FAA under Part 107 is going to hold the pilot in command responsible. Being a pilot in command is the equivalent of standing under a gutter. Any garbage that comes down the gutter, no matter what, comes on your head. No matter what, whose fault ever created it, it's your fault that whatever happened upstream came downstream on you. So you should have just not flown. That's probably the best way to describe that. So the good way to paraphrase that is almost no matter what, it's your fault. It's probably the good way to remember that rule. Now, for third-party liability, you could have some issues there. Flying in a maybe a careless and reckless manner, that you were flying below the standard of duty of care that was required of you as a pilot. So there are some liabilities there. between you and the third party, and if the dollar amount was over $500, you're required to report that to the FAA. If you cause some serious injury, knock someone unconscious, you're required to report that. Failure to report that also can get you in trouble with the FAA. So the cops show up, and then they notify the FAA. FAA starts sniffing around, asking, hey, why don't you report? Then now, on top of the careless and reckless situation, you're also got a failure to report situation. So it can get nasty fast. So best bet is to be careful before you fly.
And each one of those is going to accrue you another $1,100 fine or whatever it is that they the rate is every one of those citations. I know something that's just crossed my mind, and I'm going to get the pronunciation of the chap's name completely wrong now, but the turkey roasting, flame-throwing quadcopter guy, I'm not even going to bother trying to say his name, we all know he's talking about now. He refused to hand over his records or anything like that to the FAA because he believed he could. Are we in a situation now with Part 101 and I know in 107 you are required now to hand over your documents and records to the FAA in appropriate times. Did they bring that in with 101 as well?
That all happened prior to 101.
Oh, okay.
So the FAA is using their deposition powers. They have to subpoena them to testify is really what's going on. So they subpoenaed the son as well as the father to testify, turn over records. They had a bunch of questions they asked, and so then that's what the court case was about in it was a district court in Connecticut. The court ruled that the FAA that actually enforced the depositions of the FAA. It was actually through the Department of Justice, and so it was basically reasoning that the statute that gives the FAA authority to do such is very broad. So now they're going to go on a fishing expedition, and this is the same exact tactic that the FAA did with Skypan. The guys that got hit with the $1.9 million aggregate fine was like last year. So that's a tactic they might start using more so, is subpoenaing people, getting them to testify, and then finding out every little thing that they've ever done, and then trying to tack on $1,100 per violation. So it's going to be interesting because they're going to try to use maybe Part 91 for the flights. And so I don't know how the Mario, the attorney, is going to kind of counter that with, are they within Section 3 through 6, so therefore Part 91 does not regulate them, but a lot of those issues are all tied back to how the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals case, the John Taylor case I just mentioned, gets ruled upon, because that's there's three big issues that have been getting discussed over the last probably 6 months here. It's the legality of Part 48, the legality of the FAA's now new interpretation of Part 47, where they're now saying registration is required when it had never been enforced before. However, it was on the books, but they just exercised their discretion, as the FAA said. And then lastly, the whole whether or not the FAA can just enact the or activate the no-fly zone around the DC area, the SFRA. And then they kind of cite their authority for that into the regs, and that our proper notice was in Advisory Circular 9157A. So all that is going to affect that case. It's going to affect a lot of cases coming out. So it's going to be interesting to see when that case finally gets answered. And we estimate in late January, early February. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This is crushingly boring, all this 107 stuff, really. Let's get on to stuff that Gene and I like better, which is new airframes and stuff like that. The guys at Parrot are getting into releasing some tasty-looking kit. There's one thing, I'm just going to put it up and screen share it today, that just looks quite neat. It's $139. It's a toy, but it's an off-the-shelf VTOL, which is extraordinary. And I haven't seen it fly, but if it can transition properly, which is a problem with VTOLs, then that'll be a wonderful thing. So that looks cool. So there's an innovation coming from them there. And let's see if we can find the other one. But the other one is the Flying Wing, the Disco. And Gene, you are Mr. Flying Wing. So have you had a look at that Disco? Any thoughts about that?
You know, I have, Gary, and it's an interesting little piece. Well, I think probably one of the most important things from that is that it brings a fixed wing back into the control of an app, you know, on your phone, which we've been waiting for that for a while, I think, to get the control down that simple. And I'm going to put my neck out a little bit. You know, 107 is probably, back to that subject, more for the guys that are flying copters and, you know, that sort of thing, because right now that's the poster child, pretty much. But I think you're going to see a resurgence in fixed wings. I think you're going to see more and more people realize that, you know, the copter is cool and all that, but I need to go way over there, and I need to just hang out there for a while. And the Parrot, the Disco, it's a clean little aircraft. It's designed to make use of as much flying physics as it can. I mean, it's always been that way for me. The wing has been the way to go. The wing is a thing, as they say.
And well, I sort of threw up there, and I think you can see that space behind the battery, and that looks like that's going to fit one of those Sequoia cameras really nicely, which is their multispectral camera, which is another Parrot company. So they are, if it's even slightly in their thinking, that sort of thing, and extra sensors, then they're really stealing a little bit of a leap, or a march, I should say, on DJI, unless DJI are maybe they're going to come out with a wing in Berlin. I very much doubt it, because on the 1st at ILA, there's an announce of some sort happening in Berlin. I think it's a small, there, look, he's drinking, actually he only drinks pints of gin, you know, and he only drinks gin in the daytime, whiskey in the evening. It's lunchtime there, isn't it? So he's probably on to the whiskey shortly in the pints.
All right, who's got GMT problems here? It's tea time. It's got to be at least tea time in Florida.
It's 5 o'clock. So.
Oh, there you go. Boom! There you go. Ding, 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 ding.
Cocktail hour.
Cocktail hour.
That's what we should call this. That's what we should call this. That's what it should be. But no, I think the Parrot Wing is a fantastic thing, and it's obviously a bit of an EB killer. And Patrick, you really should be getting John Chimani to send us a whole caseload of them. Why aren't they here yet?
Well, that's you know, I've already been like, hey, you know, but you know, let's say they have so many that they give out to people, yada yada, and we'll have to see if we get in line. I like the little X-Wing thing myself. I think that's kind of interesting. The other thing, and I don't know if we mentioned this before, but I'm wondering, like Gene says, well, you know, people are gonna take another look at fixed wing. Will fixed wing be considered a drone? Most people think that a drone is a quadcopter.
You're right. You're right.
So, you know, that's not a drone, that's a UAV.
No.
This is a drone.
Sure.
Well, I think that actually is interesting, because in the study material that the FAA put out, they talked about the center of lift and then center of gravity in relationship to each other. And the conversation of the balancing the aircraft and stuff really only made sense in regards to a fixed-wing aircraft. So the whole idea of having the, you know, especially with you want to have a nose-heavy aircraft, so that way when you stall it, right, it goes down, so it gains airspeed, and you don't have the problem of where it's if it's tail-heavy, then you just get in a flat spin and you're doing a Top Gun situation, and then your dude behind you dies, and you know, like, then you have emotional issues for the next like 30 minutes. And you got to ride around a motorcycle to get out of it, and it's like...
Goose is dead. Goose is dead.
Oh, Ghost Rider.
But what
So,
did they say? RCG fly once. There's a saying, isn't it? RCG fly once and forward CG always fly, something like that. There's some phrase, isn't it? In fact, funny enough, that's one of the things with a wing, isn't it? Well, Gene, you'll know that the CG is quite important, and if you get it wrong, so if you give people choice with a wing, I tried to sell wings once, and we gave people choice, and that was a big mistake. We had one guy who just said every time it flies on autopilot, it's fine. As soon as we try and hand fly it, it doesn't fly at all. And we had cut slots, slot for the battery, slot for the camera, and I can't remember. There was 3 slots, and I couldn't understand why this guy couldn't fly the thing manually. And I said, in the end, well, send me a photo. And he'd put the battery right at the back. It's like, oh no, that's not how it's supposed to go. He's sending photos. So the idea that this wing is, you can't modify anything here. You can't faff with it. Everything will be set up. And they're such efficient flyers. That aeroplane behind you, I mean, I should imagine this wing will probably be 4 or 5 amp hours it flies around at. You've got a high aspect ratio wing behind you there, Gene. What sort of amp hours are you flying that around at? 3.
3 amps. That's a very nicely done high aspect ratio wing that is very efficient. It does like to fly fast, but you got to have flaps out to slow it down. This particular one behind me doesn't have flaps, so when it comes in hot.
You need a big field.
But, you need a big field, and that's unfortunate, because when you get into that ground effect, it will go the length of the field. But you're right. The flying wing is it's a very nicely done flying lifting body. And I'll go you one better. I always made my wings with dark on the bottom, light on the top, so you could see which way it was turning. I had an individual call me up, and they kept saying that it kept diving into the ground. And I went through all the reversing, the transfer, everything on the phone, and it kept diving in. I finally asked him, I said, which color is up?
Yeah.
Said, the dark blue color is up. And I was like, flip it over and try it. Click, up on me, and that was it. So never heard from them again.
So, if we say that airplane behind you is 3 amp hours, that wing is probably 4 or 5 amp hours. I can't even, I don't work in multi-rotors in amp hours, but goodness knows what they are. I mean, they'll be right up there, 30, 40, 50 amp hours.
Yeah,
so
30 to 40, yeah.
Yeah, so straight away endurance. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see you're going to get out of a 5 amp hour battery. You're going to get X with an airplane and Y with a multi-rotor. So they will. I think a lot of people, once they start getting into the agricultural, and now again we can loop it back to 107 with the waiver for beyond visual line of sight, and the one for allowing you to operate from a moving vehicle. That's fantastic for farmers or power and pipeline surveys.
Well, it's moving vehicle over a populated area. 107 allows you to do moving vehicle currently in sparsely populated areas, so that's the key point. It's the populated areas.
Okay, my bad. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. My bad. But it does allow you then to follow that pipeline, follow the power line, or go up and down the fields on your farm. So it's actually quite a big leap, and I don't think enough's been made of that really. I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but multi-rotors, until the batteries that are currently made of unobtainium are made, they're never going to do the job when airplanes are going to do. A lot of survey companies or a lot of multi-rotor companies are going to find themselves looking at wings now. So Parrot may have positioned themselves perfectly with the lead-in drug for the EB, which will be the Disco. Maybe I'm wrong.
I agree, but I will tell you, there's a battery out that's called a beta voltaic. And it'll turn out, I think, 15 volts at 30 amps for 5 years. Of course, it has a radioactive material in it, and it's a little bit of an issue if you crash, but they're out there.
Wow.
All right, so that name of that battery and the Night Waver, I think those are like 2 new drone names.
Beta Voltaire.
And Nightwaver.
Yeah, but the problem with the beta voltaic is that it's radioactive, so it's probably going to be classified as hazmat. So therefore, 107, you can't fly it under 107. So sorry.
Yeah, but I bet I can order them from Amazon, and they'll bring them in the Amazon drone, and that'll be fine.
Radioactive drones flying. Okay. I don't know what's easier to fight, the privacy issue or radioactive. I mean, that's.
You could make the privacy issue go away.
Yeah.
For about 100,000 years.
I mean, that's like the difference between getting run over by a lawnmower and going to a Celine Dion concert. It's like, either one of them's bad.
No.
Send the hate mail to Gary at.
Yeah, I think on that Celine Dion bombshell, we've probably been ranting on for about an hour. So that was the week that was for us on this Tuesday, the 30th of August, where we have yet again not said much. But thanks everybody for your time, and we'll do this again next Tuesday, and when we're into week 2 of part 107, and I might even try and get some of my countrymen across from the UK to speak, because rules have changed over there a little bit, so we need to speak to that, and you guys over there need to talk to people that have been doing this for several years. Obviously they've got the experience that you need. So guys, thanks very much, and we'll speak again next week.
See you.
See you later.
Cheers.